Hello, everybody. My name's Amir Mizrach. I'm the tech editor for Europe here in London for the Wall Street Journal. Just before I got on this panel, I tweeted about the previous panel that was all male, and here we are again, an all-male panel talking about innovation. So I'm just going to caveat this and say that, everyone here is fantastic in what they do, but unBound should really try and get more diverse, especially when it talks about innovation. Okay, I'm going to just interview and introduce Matt Drinkwater from the London School of Fashion, James Hilton, founder and CEO, MNC Saatchi Mobile, and Adam Freeman, managing director, Bloomberg Media. The panel today is Innovating, the way we communicate with our audience. I was going to ask the three of you just to briefly introduce yourself, take us through what you do, and then we'll take it from there.
Thanks, Samir. I am a guy, but my family at home always refer to me as a big girl, so hopefully that will slightly adjust the balance. No, it's not working, is it? I'm Matt Drinkwater, head of fashion innovation at London College of Fashion, and I head up a small team which is looking to use technology to change the way that designers are making their collections through smart materials and smart processes, change the way that they show their collections. So we do a lot of fun stuff at London Fashion Week, and then ultimately change the way that they sell those collections. And if I told you that less than 40% of the designers that show at London Fashion Week have an e-commerce platform, it might give you an idea that technology in fashion, as much as all the hype is, has a long way to go. And I've got a couple of slides up of some of the projects that we've delivered. This is a dress that we made for the Walt Disney Company, who we consult for, and who have had, over the past 18 months or so, a growing interest in wearable and connected clothing, wearable technology and connected clothing. And this is a dress, a fiber optic dress that we made based on Tinkerbell. And the impact of this dress was amazing. It had over 200 million impressions on social media, and is increasingly being used by brands as a way to get their message to consumers. And there's one more. And this is something that I have just finished working on with Lucasfilm, who I've spent the last 12 months working alongside for a small budget film called Star Wars: The Force Awakens. And it's a 3D printed bionic arm, which we made in partnership with a Bristol-based company called Open Bionics. And it's interesting how brands are beginning to use technology, fashion, to reach a new consumer with a very different message.
Thanks,
so that's me.
Great. I'm James Hilton. I'm the founder and CEO of Emesis Saatchi Mobile. We are a pure mobile media agency in essence. We started 10 years ago next year. So we launched our business before the iPhone, which in hindsight was very good. At the time was probably a bit foolish. And the reality is that we've seen the market exponentially change. We've seen it from 10 years ago. The audience, the banks, everyone was laughing about mobile. Everyone was saying, when is the year for mobile? And it was like the industry joke that mobile will never take off. And then we go ahead sort of 10 years, and obviously now we've seen that mobile is truly integrated into the consumer's life. I think we are trying to unravel the challenges of mobile, that basically a lot of brands are basically turning around and saying, well, last click isn't proving out in the favor of mobile. But the reality is that consumer time on mobile is growing year on year. Engagement is growing year on year. And we represent brands such as Amazon, Microsoft, Alibaba, to really help them understand is that what part of the funnel they're working on and how they wanting to see results. So we do performance, we do brand, but the reality is that we see mobile as at the centerpiece of the consumer's life, and how they work with other channels is something that's to be very closely measured and observed. And as I say, the market's changing immeasurably year on year, and hopefully today's session we'll be talking about different ways of doing that.
Thank you. Adam?
Adam Freeman, I'm Managing Director for Bloomberg Media in Europe, Middle East and Africa. My brief is to build a media business in that region of the world as part of a new global ambition for Bloomberg. to help business professionals make smarter decisions. My remit is across all areas of the business, so the editorial, marketing, commercial, all areas of the business work with me, and I look after both the television, digital, live events, and any other businesses that we do outside of the Bloomberg terminal.
Okay, let's go and deep dive, if we can, into each one. Matt, you were talking about connected clothing. Just a quick thing. Does this clothing collect data about the wearer, and how do you see that whole idea of collecting data, whether it's biometric or all that kind of stuff, and where would that fit into the design, the marketing, the business side of things?
Yeah, the answer is it will do. There's nothing really out there at the moment in terms of smart garments collecting enormous amounts of data. I think Ralph Lauren have been one of the first to bring product to market, so they have a smart shirt which was launched in the last couple of months. But I think data will be hugely important to the retailers who are beginning to sell this product. I think the idea that we have a vision of what's beyond the mobile and where our clothes will be 10, 15 years from now, beginning to look at what is that next screen, where we will be able to download content to our clothing. And I think the idea that...
What do you mean by downloading content to your clothing?
I think we're working on some projects which perhaps will allow retailers in the future to start to personalize an experience in store and start to deliver the kind of retail experience that traditionally would have happened in the past. So, and perhaps giving a bit of diversity to the high street. So imagine if you could walk into a retail store and maybe through Beacon, maybe through Li-Fi, you could download a new designer print onto your sweatshirt. In a very basic form, we could do that now with flexible OLEDs in your shirt, which will allow you to download that content and have a static image, so you could maybe pull from an Instagram feed. But the point at which you could go into an individual store, and maybe it's a Topshop or an ASOS, and deliver something specific to that store and to that consumer, I think that becomes really interesting.
I asked you about data, and you took me straight away to retail, and I want to come back to you on this. And James, I want to get your input on this. Clothes that collect data, phones that collect data, apps that collect data. Right now, we are negotiating who that data belongs to. Does it belong to us? Does it belong to the brand, to the phone maker, to the telco? How do you see the ownership of data in your business going forward?
Yeah, I think it's that is the topic at the moment in the industry, without a shadow of a doubt. I suppose the way to look at it is that who has the data opposed to who owns it, and I think there's two sides to it. Who has the data at the moment is Facebook and Google. Obviously, lots of other businesses have bits of data, but who has the biggest stack of data is Facebook and Google. And the reason being is that Facebook basically is actual data opposed to assumed data. So when you've just got engaged, for example, you put that on Facebook, they have that data. They open that up to marketeers. So Facebook and Google certainly collected that data. Who should own that data? I would say it should be owned by the brand, but the agency needs to use the data. So the ownership, basically, agencies don't have this huge desire to own the data if they're credible, because that data should be owned by the brands, because it is the brand's proprietary information.
Okay, so you're saying that the brands should own that data, but what about, and here, Matt, I'm going to ask you again, I buy a T-shirt and a jacket and a tie, and they measure my perspiration, they measure my stress, they measure my heartbeat. That is my personal biometric health information. Who should own that data?
That's pretty personal, isn't it? And I think it's really interesting. Whenever we talk about data, I mean, there are all of the scares around security and who owns it. And I always hear stats and statements being thrown around like, the younger generation don't care about data. It won't matter. I personally don't know. I think there just needs to be more clarity. I think understanding what you want to do with that, putting it back in my hands, I think would be, for me, what I would want. I want to be able to control what I do with that data, particularly with data concerning health and pretty much all of the data about where I've been wandering around London. I don't want anyone else to know that. But I think that
But aren't you concerned that your shirt, your hat can be tracked, that you will be giving away?
I already am doing that. I mean, I think I'm already I wear an Apple Watch, and I think that my data is being tracked constantly at the moment.
Adam, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I think we've got to enter at some point, there's got to be a more mutually beneficial relationship with the end consumer. So I think the point you're trying to push us to is actually you need to share the information. The owner of the information, ultimately, for some of the examples you've talked about, is the person. It's my heartbeat, my sweat rate, which at the moment under these lights would be quite alarming, I think.
I wasn't going to say anything.
No, you're probably tracking it. So I think there just has to be a more balanced relationship. And it's one of these things that's easy to overestimate in the short term. 10 years we've been talking about ad blocking, and it's now finally something that everyone's taking seriously. Well, I've funded 2 startups around that space over the last 5 years and got nowhere because no one wanted to talk about it. So I think it's incumbent on us as digital business people to build products that work for the audience as well.
Adam, your audience is a little bit different than Matt and James. Let's say there's a more fashion and brand, and you have a lot of big companies. You have a business-minded audience that you need to distill knowledge from a huge amount of data. This panel is about innovating the way we communicate with that audience.
Yes.
How do you hop on to that data to pull that out for your specific business audience?
Well, there are 2 ways to do it. There's inside the terminal, which is the world's biggest paywall ever built. Hundreds of thousands of paying subscribers. We don't talk about the numbers publicly, but they are available, tens of thousands of dollars a subscriber. You can't work in the financial services industry or around that sector in the world anywhere without using our technology. There are 30...
Yes, you can. Sorry.
There are 30...
I have to say, as the Wall Street Journal, that yes, you can.
Well, you can't trade financial information.
Right.
You can't trade, can you?
No.
No, so you can't. So there are 30,000 functions in that piece of hardware. So we have 2,500 data analysts who track the information flows for our customers. And we have teams of people who manage those relationships individually with our paying subscribers.
Sorry, you have 2,500 data analysts.
Yeah.
Who manages them? Who pulls their direction? Where's their focus?
Well, they're doing a number of things. They're pulling out market insights for our customers based on information that we see, for example, the way we aggregate data sources. They're talking to companies about industry moves, whether it's consumer behaviors or market segments. And we have almost a one-to-one account relationship with our paying customers as a business. So inside the terminal is a incredibly well managed and personalized service. Outside of the terminal, we are a free open-air website, right, and we're working as lots of other digital businesses are.
James, interesting angle here. You come from an advertising agency originally, and advertising agencies, in my imagination, are always mad men, creative, a couple of people who sit in a room, smoke and drink, and come up with the idea. But now, so with Adam, we have this group of data analysts. How are you guys dealing with data? Do you have more data people in the creative in the room?
Yeah, I think we've got 6 offices around the world with about 150 staff. I would say of those people, 140 are highly data literate. Ours is we are a data business. We have a creative team, and basically they do the banners and they do the rich media and things such as that. The reality is that we are a performance business, is that we need to drive response and measure response. So all the media we buy is fully tracked, fully optimized, fully recorded, and we buy huge amounts on programmatic. I think when you think of like ad agencies, I think we were more of the side of a media agency. Basically our business is programmatic media. It's all about data.
Has there been a kind of cultural clash or an adjustment period where, for a while you had your creative people only, and then you started bringing in these mathematicians, right? Statisticians?
Sure. I mean, Emesis Mobile, we were created to be this type of business. The traditional agency of Emesis still have lots of creative people, but they do have, they are a creative business, but they still do have that sort of underpinning now that we need to measure and record. Creativity hasn't changed. We still need high impact placements, but we're just running them in different places. So if you go back to when Morris and Charles started the business, the Saatchi brothers, it was like we get paid a fair fee to do a big TV ad. and basically you run it on TV, you flight it on something like an X Factor or Coronation Street, job done. The reality is consumers now are so disparate in what they're doing and all their viewing habits that that won't work anymore. So what has changed in advertising is that the big creative is still the same, but you're not making just a TV ad. That TV ad is actually manifesting itself across all digital channels and all other kind of touch points to the consumer. And that's kind of where the big change. I think we've always got to understand that what data should enable us to do is make more informed decisions. What it shouldn't make us do is dampen creativity.
Can you describe just briefly the kind of skills, training, education that a data analyst in your organization and with you also, is there any place for creative within a person who has to deal with tables and Excel sheets and numbers and gathering and all that? What is the kind of person you're looking for?
Yeah, I think basically we have a data team who are basically running the business intelligence platform and things such as that. And also we have our media people who are buying the media. And so if you think about something such as like Facebook, when you're buying advertising on Facebook, which we buy a tremendous amount of, when you talk about creativity, the creativity is in the placement as well as the actual execution. So it's how are you engaging someone? How can you be different? You know, we've got thousands of touch points within Facebook of how we can target someone. What's a creative way of doing that? That's where creativity manifests itself nowadays. You don't need to keep making huge creative concepts and campaigns. What it is basically getting to the right audience, the right message at the right time. And there are very creative ways of doing that, certainly with some of the advanced features of Facebook, where you can really dig deep into your consumer, and we find amazing stats. Like basically Samsung. So we represent Amazon and Audible and people such as that. And so we're looking into what if someone's interested next, what's their propensity to be interested in why? How do we work out that relationship? So as I say, it's more about the creative, looking at the data and thinking about the data creatively, and not relying on the placement, on the actual creative messaging to do everything. It's a real balance change now.
I'll get back to you in a second, man. I wanted to ask you, do you also have a kind of a reaction from readers, from business people, where you call them up and you say, hey, what did you think of that story? Or is it all just, did they click, did they not? Is there a human on the other side, or is it just their actions on the terminal?
Yeah, I think you have to do both, don't you? You know, data gives you real insight, but actually, particularly content businesses need to become much less about their own output and much more about their audiences and understanding those audiences. And the mix of data and intuition is a really, really valuable combination. A lot of that intuition is double-checked through audiences. So, you know, we talk to our audiences all the time. Bloomberg has a 24-hour global hotline. You can call us at any time in the world and we'll talk to you. And I think those insights are really, really important, because otherwise the numbers are never going to tell you the full story. And I actually think there's huge creativity in data. You know, you'll know this yourself as a journalist. You can tell an amazing story with an infographic without hardly using any text.
Right.
So I think the world around us is changing, and the different generations are growing up expecting to be told different stories in different ways because of that.
Matthew, are you guys looking into any kind of, is there any technology, whether it's robots, automation, 3D printing, that you think can make things faster, better?
Yeah, so we're looking, I guess, at every aspect of the designer business, but it's interesting talking about data, and I'll just make a point on that, is that the designers that we work with, and we'd love for them to be more data-driven and use that to grow their businesses in a more rational way. But ultimately, certainly the fashion industry is emotion-driven. And we've been really interested in looking at how we can use wearable technology to begin to measure emotion, and how brands can then begin to use...
Why does that make me creeped out?
Yeah,
that creeps me out a bit.
So I actually did a presentation to the Walt Disney Company, to their executive group,
feel that
and had them strapped up in what is effectively...
It's eliciting an emotional response. Which
Yeah.
yes, I am a human. It is an emotional response to...
And I did this full-on presentation. I included some lovely photos. I had my daughter in there and did a lovely story about how we went to Disney World, tried to make them cry. But it was really interesting. They were all strapped up to effectively what is old polygraph technology, and you could begin to test their reaction. So you can then begin to imagine how that might impact their business, say, at a theme park, when you understand when consumers are happy. And if you run that cycle enough times, in a happy scenario, you can begin to track when people are happy, when they're sad.
Where is that going? I mean, that to me sounds great for retailers, for advertisers, but it sounds a little bit creepy for me as an audience, because I feel like you're going to know me, you're going to own me.
Yeah,
I mean, are you aware of that kind of backlash? Are you aware? How do you design kind of a privacy or an opt-out in this kind of stuff?
So I always lean on the more optimistic side, because I think the opportunity is more exciting than the threat. And ultimately, I think, you know, we talked about that balance of interaction and what I get out of it. And if I pull it back to a shopping scenario, I hate shopping. I'm not queuing up for anything in a Superdrug or a Boots anymore. I kind of want people to know what I want, what I need. Particularly if I go into a fashion retail environment, they should know who I am, know what size I am, know what I bought last time, not recommend me the same kind of stuff. That vision of a sales assistant standing there and telling me what I should have, when actually they could know exactly what I want, I think is.
Do you think that these kind of sales assistants are going to be obsolete?
Yeah, well, certainly at a large-scale retailer. I mean, I always use the Superdrug and the Boots example.
Right.
There is simply no need for it within that environment whatsoever.
James, the advertising industry, I'll get in a second. The advertising industry has measured people's emotional reactions to products, services for a long time. Where is technology taking you there? Are you getting better at it? Is there more thought about perhaps the ethical issues here?
Yeah, I think just one's got to touch on the data point as well. Is that if we look at the last general election, it looked like it was going to be a Labour win, a strong Labour win, and it was a Conservative win, because people said they were going to vote Labour, but they actually voted Conservative. I think the same analogy comes back to data. We say we don't want people capturing this data and sort of generating this data, but every single minute of every day, people are giving the data. If we didn't want to give the data, we wouldn't use Facebook. We wouldn't upload pictures of ourselves, checking into restaurants. That is the trade-off. And I don't think there's anything to be worried about this data, because I think the reality is that it's for brands and for business services to provide a better service to their customers. It's trying to reach the right people, not the wrong people. If you came down in the morning and through your mailbox you had 5 pieces of direct marketing, but all spot on to absolutely every single one you looked at going, I really like that, I might buy that, you would actually look forward to getting it. The reality, what happened is, with direct marketing, is that too much happens, we didn't have enough data, and everyone thought that the cheapest thing to do is send everyone the same message, and it made this overpile of that. We get frustrated at the moment, we talk about ad blocking. People aren't using it. The percentage of people using ad blocking is very, very low still on mobile.
It's still growing, though.
It's growing, but we're dealing with very, very small numbers.
Yeah, so it's significant on the desktop because it was driven by the browser. It will happen on mobile. It's just there's a time lag, but it will happen.
I think that basically the reality is, that generating data, the companies who are paying to generate the data will use that data to better improve their services, their offering, and hopefully your product offering as well. Marketeers, advertising agencies, everyone, we're all looking at the data because we want to provide the best possible services. That's all we want to do. We don't want to know anything about anyone's private lives and things such as that. What we want to be able to do is basically saying, right, we can put this message to this customer where we've got them in the right frame of mind, where they will have perceived value of what we're doing. And I think basically we should stop worrying so much about who owns it and things such as that. And I think as a business, we're more concerned about how can we best utilize it to help our customers. And I think if brands can start doing that, and generally if you look at the pervasive ways of advertising, if it was more tailored for the individuals, the consumers wouldn't want to opt out of advertising so rapidly over saying desktop.
I'm not 100% convinced. I also think that there is a trade-off between, okay, I get these 5 emails in the morning, and I want it all, and I'm going to go and buy it all, but do I really need those things? Adam, is there perhaps knowing us too well and selling us things that we perhaps we don't really need, but somehow you guys have figured out that we want?
I think James's point is really valid about the value exchange. And I think if the value exchange with the audience is honest and transparent, I think your point about being able to say no, I think that's the problem with the advertising sector at the moment, is saying no is really difficult.
It's difficult.
Yeah, so the only thing you do is you just turn it all off by blocking it. But brands change behavior. Governments don't change behavior. Marketing changes consumer behavior. So actually, we want brands to communicate with their audiences, if only to make the world a better place, for example, or actually to help them have an emotionally powerful relationship with a new gadget, a holiday, whatever stimulates their life. So I think that's an important part of modern society. And then there is a tension between the narrowness of targeting and the serendipity of, I didn't even know that existed. And I think that, again, is a balancing act. It's one of the reasons why in our business we see television advertising is still a really powerful part of our model, although digital revenue is almost as large now. And it's that mix between the two that I think the emotional engagement, but the right message to the right person at the right time has been the holy grail. And we've just never really been able to do it properly before.
We've got just a minute or two left, so I'm just going to ask you if you have any questions, just to put them in your mind, and we're going to come back to you in a minute. What I like to do at the end of every panel is just to ask the panelists to give us a minute or two about what they're working on now. What is on your desk right now that is the most important thing that you're working on? Take us just a little bit into it as much as you can.
So for us, we are spending a lot of time on virtual and augmented reality. I think it has the possibility of completely changing the way that designers make and show and sell their collections. The idea that we could remove prototyping by taking a physical 2D sketch, bringing it into 3D, to really actually showcase how clothes sit on each individual body could be amazing. And that would be an incredible design tool also for people to experience touch and feel within virtual. It's kind of a big difference.
So you've got a lab, you're working on the stuff, you're testing the stuff?
Yeah, we tend to work with a lot of partners, so we go find anyone who's doing exciting stuff in VR and go get them to do it for us.
James?
For us, I think we've just got over Black Friday, Cyber Monday, so basically now back to what we did normally.
The rest of the week off.
The rest of the week off, yeah. For us, it's all about attribution. It's that basically we firmly believe that there's a place for TV advertising, above the line, press, radio, and at the moment I think there's been too much of an appetite from digital marketeers to saying, well, if we can't track it, it's not working. And the reality is, in our experience, that is certainly not the case. And it's basically what we're trying to do is trying to attribute the value of television, press, radio, how it impacts digital, and how we can do cross-device marketing and attribution. Because that is the biggest challenge of our industry, is that people are going on their laptops and looking at something, they're going on their phones and looking at something, going on their iPads looking at something, and where they do the final transaction is all being allocated to that one device. And the reality is that there's an attribution between digital and an attribution between the rest of all the media channels.
Closing the loop.
Closing the loop and basically making sure that we get the right message to the right customers at the right time, which again minimizes wastage. It minimizes disengagement for the customer because we're not showing a message.
That doesn't sound too difficult to me for some reason. I mean, it's just basically I go on Amazon on my phone, I go on Amazon on my web, on my PC, and then I buy on my laptop. Why can't you make that?
If you were to look at, I'm not just about Amazon per se, but basically if you look at any brand, is that the reality is that yes, if you're on the site or on the app, it's easier to track. The reality is, what is driving someone to actually make a purchase? So when they're a customer, it's one thing, but when you're basically talking about other brands, they may be getting, like, I'll just put it into Reuters' case, they may be advertising on multiple touch points, the consumer's touching on those touch points and actually making the sale at the end. And basically, Reuters is saying, well, Google search is the best for us, but the reality is it's not. So I wasn't.
Adam from Bloomberg, please.
You've just upset WSJ and Bloomberg in one easy go.
Sorry.
Adam, what are you working on right now that's the most important thing on your...
I was going to say a similar model to James, but I'm not now because he's upset me. They are essentially trying to work out what stories are working in which channels at what time. So 6 in the morning, I turn my mobile phone on. What have I missed what business news do I need to understand before I get to the office? It's lunchtime. Maybe I'm on the website, or I'm watching television or live streaming. How do those two things link? And then what do I need at the end of the day? That understanding that audience need across all of the channels we have is the big next challenge.
Great, thank you. Any questions from anyone? Thoughts? No? All right, we're good. Thank you very much. Oh, there is one. Yes, go ahead. Just tell us who you want to talk to. Okay.
Can you hear me okay? Oh, that's better.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about ownership of data and who it belongs to, and I just wonder if any of the panel have got any thoughts about actually giving customers access to that data, giving the data back to them so they can maybe marry it up with other services to create more innovative experiences.
Yeah, I would. You monetize it. That's my data. I see that as a real opportunity for individuals to take control of that. There's enormous value in that data to all sorts of businesses. That's for me.
It's coming. VRM has been around for a long time, hasn't it? And now, it's the places, it's the product, the actual user experience and having those access points to data that's the difficult thing to answer.
And I think the retailers, people like PayPal and people like that, are collecting that data.
Yep.
I suppose it's all about who's going to get it off you and who you're going to allow. Like when I go and make a transaction online, I love it when there's PayPal, because I haven't got to enter all my details in. It's all done for me, and I just push buy, and username and password, I'm finished. They've collected my data, and I'm getting value out of that data. So I do think it is the trade-off. I think the consumer basically being able to sell their data, it's quite hard because it's done in millions. So basically an individual customer trying to auction their data off, you'll be very surprised how little they may get for it. Yeah. When it's put together, then it's worth more money.
You're all relatively worthless.
I've got some.
Really.
Any more? Yes.
I'm Lindsay Cooten here from PwC. I lead a team looking at how we communicate with our clients and target companies in the digital era. And I wonder if you have any advice for traditional businesses like ours about how we can bring ourselves forward into the modern days.
Well, I'd spend all your money on the Wall Street Journal, because I think that's the best place to have that dialogue. Well, I think you've got to find ways to add value to their business, their day-to-day business lives, whether it's helping them make better decisions or giving them insights they didn't have before, and opening up everything that's inside all your many offices around the world that you have to be a paying customer to see. Opening that up, finding the nuggets that actually are great ways to build your profile as an organization, your areas of expertise, and get them to physically touch it, whether it's in person or digitally. And I think in time you can build quite a strong relationship with quite a diverse set of possible customers, and don't worry about the ROI in the short term.
I completely agree, and also I'd say that basically it's making it, I think if you look at the generation coming through, they don't like long-form content. It's very, very snackable. And I think lots of people are into that snackable, portable experience. And I think it's measuring what they're consuming and making sure you give it to them in that format moving forward would certainly heighten the engagement. But I do find that basically people, for my children, they just don't like reading long-form content. It's how can it be compressed as short as possible. I think Twitter is obviously too short, but I think when you ask someone to read something which is 4 pages, they just don't do it anymore.
Good? That was okay? All right. Thank you, everyone, to Matthew Drinkwater, James Hinton, and Adam Freeman. Thank you very much.
Thank you.